Very warm welcome to everybody that's joined us for this afternoon's webinar.
Mm.
My name is Mike Franks. I'm the Managing Executive from Sales Optimization, and it's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. My name is Winston Nolan. I work quite closely with Mike. We love everything to do with sales, anything to do with helping organizations achieve their revenue goals and taking their sales teams to the next level. We thought we would launch this event with some business facts and some quirky facts about myself and Mike, just to introduce ourselves and so we can become quick friends.
So I was the colloquially called in the LRMG language a boomerang. I actually joined Learning Resources as it was then in 2002, had an 8-year stint, went overseas, did a little stint in management consulting, did some really cool project work in London, New York, and Washington, and have continued to be a fervent student and scholar of what does it mean to create a high-performance sales environment. 3 little quirky facts that I'm prepared to share because we're all friends. I get asked, I don't know how many times, if I can sing like Michael Franks, if I had $1. Well, I probably wouldn't be here. I've run 250 Ks in the desert once for fun. It actually wasn't, but I did complete it. And truth be told, I have a nickname that has stuck for 45 years called Wiggle, and no one will tell me why. But anyway, it's stuck. Winston, tell us a bit about you.
Oh man, yeah, I think in pictures, Mike, you can't tell me stuff like Wiggle, without giving me images. Well, hey, my first management and leadership role was, back when I was 23, a little young sapling, and mastered the 30-minute power nap, pretty good at that. But in terms of quirky facts, I actually bought my first vehicle from winnings from video game tournaments. I really did. True story. It was an Audi A4 back in the day. I'm a proud super geek, and I love learning new words. And I try to inculcate this into my family with my kids. And I actually grew up in the Zambezi Valley, so I've had malaria twice. So let me tell you, the mozzies in Joburg, they just fly past me and they just bow down as they actually pass me, just out of respect, because they know that I've actually survived some real mozzies, some of the worst mozzies that you could ever find in that valley. Mike, why are we here? What are we talking about today?
Well, I think the concepts for today is really to unpack what it means to create a smashing sales strategy. And what are some of the ingredients? What are some of the guiding frameworks, some of the principles? What are some of the lessons that we've learned? What are some of the frameworks that we can hopefully land with you today that brings us into an analysis that strategy is both in terms of its execution got to be extremely tactical. And I think there's an invitation for us to have a look at what we look at today is to say, how do we move today's conversation from a conceptual framework into something that we can apply? So let's jump into it, Winston. Let's have a look at what it is that we're looking to land today. And I think, in order to kind of frame this dual lens that we want to have a look at, strategy without tactics is the slowest road to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So let's look at it from 2 angles. Let's look at how we formulate a strategy, but how do we execute it? And how do we ensure that we pivot and remain true to it and adjust it when needed?
Love it, Mike. You know what? We spend a lot of time in the trenches with a lot of corporates, and when it comes to the strategy piece, there's often a disconnect as to why organizations are really struggling. And let's be conscious of where we are in time. We're coming out of the pandemic. We seem to be in another wave, and our strategies that were made pre-pandemic, are they still relevant? And do we have to adjust our strategies due to the changes in market conditions? Why is it so tough, Mike, to actually execute sales strategy?
Look, the execution of strategy is down to the awareness. So do we understand it? Do we adopt it? Do we stay true to it by and large? So understanding capacity and the ability to measure the execution against it is where it often falls over. We're not going to go too deep into the execution today. We're going to put in some framework, some thinking in terms of the build. But in order to get a sense of who is in the room and what are some of the key challenges, such that we might be able to nuance some of the conversations. We'd like to do a quick poll, and would like you to rate, or just identify rather, what are your top 3 sales challenges your business is facing today? We just want to do a quick poll, because it'd be interesting to see how we can then pivot towards some of these elements and maybe lift up some of the elements within a strategy that could help us address it.
I like it. I like it, Mike. So we're looking at a couple of dynamics, like, is your marketing and sales function not working together? Maybe you're not adding quality leads into the pipeline. That seems to be a popular one. Or our sales teams battling to get access to decision makers. Yeah, especially with work from home. How do you get a hold of decision makers? Is it easier right now? Is it more difficult? There's some schools of thought that are saying it's never been easier to get an email address. Some people are saying it's never been more difficult to actually open up opportunities. Very, very interesting indeed. Or is it sales structure? Right? There's different ways in which sales organizations, in which all organizations are actually structured. Is it an island where the entire sales team reports to a sales manager? Or is it a pod sort of cluster whereby you've got different teams that are demand generators that hand over leads to account executives that hand over leads to client success roles? I'm seeing a lot of participation in the chat. Okay, fantastic. I think, that's 15. That's 15 out of 15. I'm seeing 17 out of 17 people have answered. Let's see if we can get a few more people just to complete this before we proceed. Any thoughts there, Mike? I don't have a firm handle on our value proposition. That's something that's pervasive.
That is certainly one that I think comes up more often than not. An understanding of your value proposition in the context of the conversation is what differentiates a good proposition to an exceptional value proposition. And more often than not, what we hear is a company's capability statement. So value proposition, articulation, aligned to struggle is a big one. Be interesting to see if that comes up.
Very interesting to see the results. Okay, we'll check in on the poll results shortly. Let's charge ahead. Let's charge ahead as we get into this, and as we unpack what it actually takes to come up with a smashing sales strategy today. There's 2 important dynamics here, Mike: internal versus external. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think what the focus is that we've seen in sales strategies today is it's predominantly internal. We look at our internal processes, we look at our internal value proposition. And the invitation that we need to look at today is, how do we extend our gaze to the external market? How do we put the customer at the center of every strategy element and actually look to say, where is the differentiation? Where's the value? Where's the so what? Where's the why when we put our strategies together? So we're going to look at the importance of having an internal understanding, but aligning it to external requirements. And does our strategy fit up? Does our strategy hold up? And is it going to get us in front of more of the right people at the right time with the right narrative and the right value proposition to convert? So let's dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, Mike, I'm reminded of a business like We Buy Cars. Yeah, and hey, let's draw a line in the sand. We cannot separate sales strategy from business strategy, right? And that's an interesting example that comes to mind immediately right there, of an organization that actually saw that just due to economic conditions, there would be a tremendous demand for pre-owned vehicles over brand new. And they structured the entire business around that. I remember driving down the M1, coming out of Pretoria, seeing the billboards, with those 2 guys holding cash. If you look at the business today, massive business, 4 billion rand business. They're moving plus minus 10,000 pre-owned vehicles per month. That's a good example of a business that looked at the external environment and crafted the entire business around, and the entire strategy, their business strategy as well as their sales strategy around that. So it's something that really came to mind right there when you're talking.
We often get this confusion, Winston. I think let's just create some clarity here. When we talk strategy, what do we mean? When we talk process, what do we mean? When we talk methodology, what do we mean?
Great question, and you're quite right. Too many organizations use these terms interchangeably. They are actually quite different. So what is your sales strategy? Well, it's a set of decisions, it's your actions, it's your goals that inform how your sales organization positions yourself to acquire customers, to retain them and grow them over time. That's what your sales strategy is. So your sales strategy is the big picture, Mike, right? Your sales process, right, is a level below your sales strategy. Your sales process now informs how will we create leads? How will we get the attention of the market? And those stages in which a lead will go through, from lead identification, right, to activation of the lead. I'm talking sales process now, to getting in the room with the lead, converting a lead to an opportunity, right? Uncovering the true need, the true pain, going through all those gateways from awareness to the acquisition of a new customer, Mike. That's a sales process. And a sales methodology, last but not least, and this is the one that I think is the most ambiguous out there. We walk into a lot of meetings and a lot of organizations, talk about, we need a process, but what they're actually referring to is a methodology. The methodology is how the sales team actually engages the market. It's how the sales professionals actually reach out, actually speak, the questions that they ask, how they show up, the how they uncover what is the pain. All those dynamics is your sales methodology. And what you want is a uniform sales methodology across your entire organization. That's what you're looking for. You want to establish and you want to draw a line in the sand as to this is what good looks like. And this is the way that my organization will actually perform. And the other important thing about sales methodology, Mike, is it'll inform your recruitment, because you'll actually be able to identify when you are going through CVs, or let's say you're in an interview process, does this person really fit? And now those are the key differences, Mike, between sales strategy, sales process, and sales methodology. But let's go deeper. Let's go deeper, Mike, and let's now do this deep dive into what exactly strategy is. You want to guide us there?
Yeah. So let's get into it. So there are so many definitions in a sales strategy, but one that I liked that I think talks to clarity, and let's deconstruct it, but let's define it first. So sales strategy is defined as a documented plan for positioning and selling your product or service to qualified buyers in a way that differentiates your solution from your competitors. So let's deconstruct that. So when we talk about a documented plan, whose voice are you hearing in terms of documenting the plan? Are there any biases? Are there any blind spots? Are we getting a collective view? Are we getting a diverse view, an inclusive view in putting a plan together? When it talks to positioning and selling, do we understand the market position that we want to attract and the client base that we want to attract when we understand our positioning? And when it talks to selling, are we convincing? Are we persuading? Can we pitch? Can we listen? When we talk to qualified buyers, what is the process of getting us in front of qualified buyers? Are we trying to be all things to all people, or are we creating differentiation in the way in which we show up? And last but not least, do we have a line of sight to who we're competing with? Jobs theory, which we're going to tap into a little bit later from Clayton Christian, says, you need to understand why people buy what they buy, because when you do, your competitors become a lot clearer. So the invitation for us today is to say, does your current sales strategy provide clear goals that brings focus and ownership into everything that we do? Does it give you an identification of clear priorities to drive disciplined sales habits and activities in a prioritized manner? Does it give us the metrics to track our performance and quickly pivot to allow growth, coaching, and performance in the flow of work to sustain those metrics? And do we have clarity and understanding of the frameworks and guidelines such that we're all aligned behind what it is that we are looking to serve and how?
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, I'm getting it, Mike. I'm with you. And I understand exactly where we're going. But there's an important part, right? Our sales strategy needs a focal point. Are we going to be building our sales strategy on the economy? Are we going to be building the sales strategy on our own capabilities? We find that a lot. We found that, It was just last week, we walk into yet another boardroom, and we ask the client, for a value proposition, and invariably we get a capability statement. So what are your thoughts there? How do we hinge our sales strategy, and what should we hinge it on?
Well, I mean, it starts with the external view. And I think that was the invitation at the start of the discussion is what is the external lens that we're applying to traditionally internal elements of our business? So we're going to look at 8 core elements. We're going to do a little bit of a double click on eight of these elements. We're going to share a bit of thinking. We're going to share some frameworks. We're going to share some approaches that we've seen that when applied creates smashingness in the strategy. So let's jump into it.
Smashingness. I'm going to steal that. I'm absolutely taking that, Mike. Yeah.
Let's kick off. So why do we start with goals and objectives?
Okay.
Why are they important for us to be able to tabulate? And why does that kind of set the drumbeat for where we need to go?
You know what? A goal is a target. Every single person needs one, and every single organization needs one. The primary objective of the sales strategy is to achieve the organizational goals. That's it. In ancient Greek theology, there's the word teleos, Mike. And teleos is where we get the modern word target. Everyone needs a target. Without one, you're a ship without a sail. Not all roads will lead you to your desired destination. So we have to clarify first and foremost, what are our goals? And typically, when we're talking about sales goals, the most important thing is to have a revenue goal, right? Because that's the responsibility of sales. The responsibility of sales is to drive the revenue impetus of the organization. If I look at a sales strategy and I do not see a revenue goal, immediately there's a red flag, right? Your goals and objectives, well, they're going to guide you. They're going to lead you. They're going to inform your capacity. They're going to inform how many reps you need on your team, how many CAMs, how many BDMs you need on your team. That's where those decisions come from. It's that roadmap, Mike. It's that blueprint that actually informs all those decisions, but it's got to be smart. It can't just be a pie in the sky, right? So it's got to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. It absolutely needs to give clarity, but your goals should also ignite your team. They should excite every single member of your team, right? Because your goals actually show us when to celebrate, right? An organization without goals, well, they don't have milestones, right? They don't know when they're doing well and when they're struggling, right? So one of the key examples is number one, you have to have some sort of revenue goal. You have to have a time with which it must be achieved. That's also very key. But then you've got to have objectives, Mike. And what is an objective? Well, it's that bite-sized deliverable. It's those little actions that feed into our goals. Well, in the sales verse, well, we could talk about leads, we can talk about win rates, we can talk about conversion rates, we can talk about the number of calls. Those are all objectives. But the key is to have a goal. Very, very, very key. And that's where it all begins. Now, that being said, well, the goal has to be reaching out into the marketplace, right? I understand a shotgun approach is not the way to go. Let's talk about target market, Mike. Help us there.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on, I think it was Nadine that was saying your product quantities will affect your objectives and your goals. And I think it's absolutely right. Once you understand your quantities and you link that back into your funnel science, that'll certainly inform your research, your prospecting, and your activating KPIs. So great bit of insight into objectives. Target market. Are we trying to be all things to all people? We don't have an infinite amount of time or energy. So how are we stingy? How are we focused? How are we on point? Well, we need to understand who our ideal market is. We need to understand who our ideal customer is. And we need to then understand how we're going to tap into their space such that if we're interested in them, how do we make them interested in us? And who is in the market do we want to make interested in us? And that talks to the way in which we are assured that we don't take an overview on some of the baseline assumptions. We need to understand who is the ideal target market for our product and service? Why would they care? Why would they buy? Why does our product and service exist in that target market? Why would they choose us versus a competitor?
Hmm.
So our messaging, our engagement strategies, the way in which we get them interested in us in the absence of a target market is very much a very fruitile exercise. So your target market starts with by saying, who is our ideal customer? Why would they choose us? And how are we going to make them interested in us? All of that needs to come up in formulating our ideal customer. It then starts with how we then get them interested in us.
I'm hearing you loud and clear. I'm hearing you loud and clear. You need a target market. Okay. Okay. That's fair.
Wins, tell us a bit about products and services. Everybody is passionate about their products and services, but the market isn't as passionate about your products and services as you are. Why is products and services and value proposition number 3 in the agenda?
Yeah, you know, this one is important, Mike. This one is important because it's very easy for sales and marketing professionals to fall in love with their products. We're so ingratiated in our products. You know, when we onboard new hire, we immediately go into product training. And sales professionals quickly get sucked into the FBA, the features, benefits, and advantages. And the key is this: is first of all, yeah, it's important, but does the product fit the current market? Does the product address the current pain of the market? Does the products or services fit the goals and the reality and where the market really wants to go? And I think that's an important distinction when we're looking at sales strategy in relation to products and services. So we've got to answer some key questions. And the first point of departure, Mike, is do our products speak to our buyer personas, which is essentially the profile, the needs, the goals, the priorities of the customer? That is absolutely key. And those are the tactical questions that we need to ask ourselves continually to sense check our products in the market, to battle test our products in the market. Hey, you know, 10, let's say 12 years ago, when an airplane landed at OR Tambo, what is the first thing you heard? We were all booting our Nokias, right? Okay. These days, when the plane lands, it's dead quiet. No more Nokias. Absolutely none. So we have to continually sense check and battle test. Do our products meet the market desire right now? And we've got to be cognizant of what's happening in the future. A lot of us are packing our DSTV decoders away, right? Product market fit. It's a key component, Mike. It's absolutely key to make sure that we get that alignment right. And we make sure that our products and services are really addressing the customer's problems. Absolutely key.
So this is a big one. Understanding your competitive advantage is critical. We know that companies don't buy products and services. We're led to believe through Clayton Christensen, they hire them to complete a job, but who are you competing with to get that job done? Why is this a critically important element of every sales strategy?
Yeah, competitive advantage. Well, another pivotal component of the strategy. Why would the market choose you? Why would the market choose your products and service over a rival's? Right? What are the dynamics around that purchase decision? Right? When they're going through the decision-making process, when they're going through the push and pull factors, Mike, and they're feeling a sense of inertia and anxiety, what would make them choose you over a competitor? How are you better, faster, and cheaper? What sort of uniqueness do you bring to the table? And hey, you know what? When you're talking about competitive advantage, well, we can't ignore good old Michael Porter. Absolutely impossible to ignore him, right? I mean, he's sort of like the godfather of competitive advantage with his book that launched in 1985. I was one, by the way. But some of these constructs are as true today than they were back then. It staggers the imagination. I mean, this man was a complete visionary. And he said, hey, when you talk about competitive advantage, you've got two options. It's either you're going a cost or a differentiation competitive advantage. Now let's put that into the South African context. Organizations that come to mind that have a cost strategy in the market are guys like, I don't know, Pep stores. For your information, that's a 38 billion rand business currently. Cost leadership, I think of maybe Fly Safair, right? Okay. When I think about differentiation, well, I would put a Woolies in there. I'd put an Apple in there. Okay. But he then stacks it down to say, okay, it's either when we're crafting your competitive advantage, it's either you go the cost differentiation, right, or the cost leadership, but then you must further niche down. And you got to niche down to smaller groupings of people, right? This is where the hyper targeting comes in. So you got to understand, do you have a cost focus or do you have a differentiation focus? And the difference is, are you differentiating yourself within a focused market, or is your competitive advantage cost within a competitive market? You know, this is the key. This is the key. And once again, we can't talk competitive advantage without uplifting his 5 forces. Entry of new competitors. Well, that's destroyed a lot of organizations. Rivalry within the markets. Well, you got to box clever, and you got to stay competitive. You got to look at the bargaining power of buyers. Is it rising or is it going down? What are the demand and supply dynamics within a market? And also the threat of substitutes. Do you know who you're actually competing against? Right? What is television really competing against today? It may not be other televisions. It actually may be a laptop. It actually may be a tablet. Are you aware who your competitors are? You know, we speak to a lot of organizations. They bang out their competitors, but the biggest competitor that we actually find in the market is non-consumption. It's inertia. It's actually the tendency of human beings and organizations, Mike, to do nothing. And last but not least, well, don't talk about competitive advantage without value proposition. Cannot. And your value proposition should be the articulation as to why they should choose you. And it should answer what's in it for me. Wi-Fi, we're all listening to it. We're all selfish human beings. It's just the nature of humanity. And we must address that. If we don't address that, well, Mike, we're leaving cash on the table. Leaving cash on the table. Which brings us to the next dynamic is actually route to market. There's quite a few options here, Mike. Help us to navigate through this.
Yeah, this is a big one. Again, it talks to the efficiency and are we choosing the right channels that people relate to? Do we understand the dynamics? Do we understand the age gaps? Do we understand the way in which people buy? And have we tailored our messaging and our approach to the channel that's most suitable? So it gets to me down to saying, are we efficient? Are we looking at our cost of sale to get ourselves into the market? Do we actually understand who our market is and our ideal customer and how they like to be engaged? Are we allocating the right resources and the right channels? And are we giving them a reason to look at our value proposition and say, that's interesting. You've got me at a time when I need to be talking to you. And that talks to a sales process that we're going to tap into a little bit later. So the invitation is to say, what are the right channels that are going to get us to the market in the most effective way? What is the process that we need per each channel element? And the question that we're saying is, are we covering the sales potential that's out there? All of those are critically important factors if we start to look at the ways in which we can connect the market, and most importantly, the ways in which we can get the market interested in us is critically important, aligned to understanding of the ideal customer. Tell us a little bit about OUTsurance and how they've done that.
You know, Mike, the insurance industry is an interesting place, right? But it was OUTsurance when they launched back in the early 2000s, maybe even late 1990s, if my memory serves me correctly, when they disrupted the market with a different choice of their route to market. Traditionally, and it's pretty much pervasive today, insurance companies went to market through their brokers. OUTsurance says near high corner. We want the market to engage us directly. We want them to speak to us directly. We want to be in control of the sales process. Very interesting, very interesting, very controversial decision at the time. Very controversial decision at the time. But this is an example of how you need to apply some strategic thinking into your route to market. Are you going direct? Are you going through channel? Are you going inbound? Are you going outbound? How will you generate your leads? These are very, very key dynamics, because it actually speaks to how you will construct your sales team, how you will construct the structure of your team, and then how you will recruit. These are absolutely, absolutely key components. But let's talk about process, Mike. Let's talk about process. I touched a bit on process when I was giving the key differentiation between sales strategy, sales process, and sales methodology. Let's do a bit of a deep dive, Mike, on sales process. Help us to get through this.
This is the engine room. And you know, we at LRMG have a famous mantra that has held the test of time, that says follow the process, not the outcome. You know, far too many sales teams do what we call scoreboard gazing, where we look at the numbers on the board and we wonder why we're up or below. And we kind of think that the scoreboard will take care of itself. Well, if we follow the process, it will. Sales process is critically important today, because a number of core hygiene issues that emanate when you don't have a sales process are abundant. And the importance of sales process is actually not just in the articulation of the steps, but it's actually a bit of a change process in itself. And it starts off with by saying, do I understand the sales process? Do I buy into the sales process? And then do I have the capabilities, the tools, the systems, and the processes to follow the process? James Clear famously says, you don't rise to the level of your sales goals and KPIs, you fall to the level of your systems and your processes. So does your CRM and your pipeline function enable your process? Is there clarity in the cadence? In other words, when we start talking funnel science, do we understand the activities needed in each process step, such that each process step gets us closer to linking our value proposition to our ideal customer? And presenting your value proposition is at the heart of getting your process embedded. So does your process connect your value proposition to your ideal customer at the right time? And are you calibrating our sales process to the buyer? Because we love to follow a sales process, but there's a blind spot there. The market doesn't buy in the way that we sell. So how do we calibrate our sales process when required, and understand that the buyer's on a journey themselves, and they've got to move from awareness to action? And how do we ensure that we bring the buyer with us? And there are typically 5 steps. And the 5 steps that we look to engage is really around how do we build differentiation, get in front of the right people at the right time, build trust, get them interested in us, and want our value proposition in their business. James Clear famously said, if a company doesn't see your product and service in their business, you're already dead. And if you don't have a sales process aligned to a buyer journey to connect with the right people at the right time, the right persona, your sales process is operating in a vacuum. It is probably the most important element to get right, because it talks to core, and you can't engage process without capability. Capability is at the heart of what it is that we create in a successful sales strategy. It is around, do we have the talent density? Do we have the ability? Do we have the belief? So it's more than just capability. Do we have the belief that we can actually engage and connect and beat the competition? What competencies, what mindsets do I need in my business that's going to create differentiation and value in every touch point that we have with the market? We've talked a bit about sales habits, but what habits are serving? What do we need to start, stop, continue? Your sales habits cast votes to your sales identity. What is your sales identity that you want to be known for in the market? Do we have any flight risks in our key men, women? Do we have the bench? Are we building talent density? What are our risks? Probably the biggest takeaway that we're going to tap onto is, does my sales force have the ability to engage the market with insight? I'm going to touch on a little bit about that later. And most importantly, when it comes to developing capability, how do we do that? So let's have a look at a quick model, just while we are on capability, around what it is and how we do that. Because why is it so important? Because we can communicate as much as we like, and we can have the best value proposition we like. But if we can't communicate value, and we don't have the skill sets, the ability, and the frameworks too, our sales strategy won't get out of the blocks. So how do we build proper sales, sustainable sales capability into our structures? Let's have a quick look. And I'd like to debunk some of the held beliefs that you need to be in a classroom to be able to master critical skill sets within your business. Malcolm Gladwell famously said you need 10,000 hours to be able to master a skill. Ericsson debunked that a couple of years ago to say, actually, we don't have 10,000 hours and we don't need it either. If we follow a deliberate practice model, we can master any skill set. So how do we embed our capabilities into the flow of work? How does our sales strategy build the capability such that work and learn intersect? And it starts off by understanding your clear goals of what I need to perform. I need to be informed of what they are. I then need to be given an enabling environment, a process, a technology, leadership, strategy. I've then got to break this down into clear skill sets that I need to develop over time. These have got to be chunked into workable, measurable goals that we can measure. In my training journey, I've got to have opportunities to practice this because I won't get it right up front. I need expert coaching in the flow of work. I need that feedback loop. I need to continue to struggle with what I need in terms of creating the skill sets that I need. And then I've got to be in a position to adapt, reset, and improve, and then repeat. And through this process, we're informing of what's required. I'm being informed as a learner. I'm being excited because I'm starting to see the progress elements translate into value. I'm being allowed to apply. I'm being empowered and I'm being connected. And ultimately what this means is that I feel I'm being set up for success here. I feel that I can grow here. I feel that I can belong here. I feel that I can collaborate here. Critically important, how are we building our talent density and how are we ensuring that we're aligning work and learn, because that's the importance today. Competence as a currency isn't enough. How do we translate competence to on-the-job performance? Have you factored that in to your strategy? Thanks, Winston.
Oh, you've triggered me. You've triggered me there.
So ultimately, it's got to translate into value. And ultimately, it's got to translate into, are we pivoting our strategy when we start to see the metrics not translate? And what are those metrics? So the next step of the strategy is to actually say, where are we going and how are we going to measure our success? And it starts with reviewing your current and your previous data, and you need to informs a revenue plan. We need to understand what is the growth rate, and then we need to back integrate how this is going to influence your territory, account, product, and service targets. And then we need to say, how are we going to achieve this? And then how does all of that translate into the funnel science and the conversion ratios? And I think, Nadine, this talks beautifully to your point on your product quantities, because if you understand your quantities, your conversion ratios, your funnel science will inform your metrics. And then are we meeting those metrics? Are we identifying where we above or below those metrics in the flow of work? Are we red, amber, greening them? Is the data setting us free? And are we pivoting quickly when we're behind? Do we get feedback in the flow of work? And is there correction action to be able to timelessly execute improvement? And then that closes the loop back to one. And it keeps us honest to say, are our metrics in fact aligned to where we need to be? And have we got this vertical and horizontal integration from strategy, business strategy, to sales strategy, to KPIs, to the measurement of execution? And this thing closes the loop.
Love it. I love it, Mike. You know, I'm starting to see a bit of a flywheel there, right? I'm starting to see some flywheel momentum there, because your performance management and a gauge of how your team is doing also then feeds back and triggers the second revolution of your goals and objectives. And they're all interlinked, they're all intertwined. All these 8 elements of a smashing sales strategy, they're all sort of pillars that lift up a sales organization. But what I'd like us to do, Mike, is I'd like us to check out the chat to see if there are any questions. Let's see if we can take a couple of questions. If there's anyone that has asked anything, let's take a peep. I'm just checking out the chat. Do you see any?
I'm having to look at some comments, some calibrating of process. I think that's true, Nadine. I think that's absolutely true. If you don't have a process, Clayton Christian says as well, if you don't have a process, you actually don't know what you're doing. And if you know what you're doing, how are you calibrating it for progress?
Yeah, Anthony, I like your comment. Follow the process and not the outcome. Love it, love it, love it. The scoreboard takes care of itself, doesn't it? Yeah, yeah. Nadine, I see I triggered some nostalgia there with the comment of the Nokia. Yeah, yeah. Anthony, Keith says, overselling! Exclamation. Yeah, we see that sometimes. We see that sometimes. Mike, do you see any comments from your side?
Yeah, I'm looking at Nadine's comment around the role of performance management. I think that's a big one. You know, is performance management the carrot or the stick? And, you know, I guess there's got to be a balance between the ability to say, are we on track and why? And if we aren't, what are we going to do about it? You know, and I think that is the role of performance management, is to unlock the next layer of performance. But how we get our teams excited around the metrics and capacitated around those metrics, and do they feel they're being set up for success, I guess is the core around your whole performance management architecture and framework. So great points, Nadine.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Hanley says, this is amazing, all integrated. Where would you start? Hanley, you got to start with your goals and objectives, right? That's absolutely strategically number one. Okay, you need to look, but of course, you got to have to contextualize your goals and objectives to your market, to your product, to the competitive landscape. All right, you're not just gonna wake up and launch your TV tomorrow and compete with LG and Samsung, right? You need to be able to check out what is our competitive landscape. You're not gonna launch a software tool in HR without looking at the current software tools in South Africa that are pervasive in the market. Okay, and being realistic but ambitious. The goal has to ignite the team. You know, if an ambitious goal always attracts talent, it always draws the cream of the crop into your organization too. So I hope that gives you a bit of guidance there, and I hope that reflects. All right, Mike, shall we proceed?
Wins, let's just touch on Natasha's point, which I really think was a good look. Where do you attack and where do you defend? You know, core to every strategy is core to an understanding of your SWOT. So an understanding of your SWOT in terms of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats is core to understanding where do you need to attack in terms of the opportunity to capitalize on opportunities that are there. And then when do you need to defend? And a lot of that gets down to your competitor analysis. So your competitive environment will ultimately determine your attack and defense strategy. The question is, do you then have the capabilities, the processes, the value proposition, the engagement model?
Mike, I've lost your audio there. Okay, I've got you back.
I just see there's a question from Jonathan as well. Can you touch on new hires? Some sales are better at hunting, others suited to account management.
Ooh.
That's a big one. And I think, you know, the profile of a hunter is where we spend quite a lot of time. And a profile of a hunter is very different to a key account manager. A profile of a hunter will say, I'll put 80% of my salary at risk because I want 80% to be variable pay, because I back myself. So there's core behavioral differences and personality differences between the two. And hiring is a very critical role in terms of your recruitment strategy into your sales process. And it's important that we align strengths such that people are set up for those different roles. And have you got people playing to the highest level of contribution? Is that highest level of contribution a hunter or a farmer? Because more often than not, a lot of hygiene issues are challenged or created when you have the wrong individual and personality in the wrong role. So critically important to identify in the hiring process, are those go-getters that back themselves, that want 80% variable pay? Those are your hunters.
100%. You know, I couldn't agree more. A lot of companies instinctively come up with client personas, but do you have your sales team personas? Do you have a definition as to all the roles that you require in your sales team, and have you mapped that out as to what is the type of human being that is required for this role, and who are they selling to? You know, we oftentimes lean on constructs like the insights discovery personality profile. We often lean on constructs like understanding generations, and you need to draw a line in the sand. You need clear definition as to, number one, the competence, right? The skills, but also the character, also the disposition. Sometimes you actually need to hire within an age bracket. Oh, yes. Sometimes you need to hire the type of personality that is selling to the like personality. If our decision makers are, for example, cool blues, which is the type of personality profile that is very cool, calm, collected, they don't say much, they see everything, right? Highly intellectual, they don't say much. I mean, cool blues, even when they're in bed with their spouse, will send them a message just to ensure that there's paper trail. Highly detail oriented. Well, you don't want sunshine yellows, which are loud, verbose, and boisterous, selling to those type of people. It would behoove you to actually employ cool blues too. Let's move it along. Let's move it along. Mike, we're spending too much time here. We're getting sucked into the chat. The chat is exploding. What's next? What's next, Mike? What's happening?
Let's look to wrap up. Let's look to wrap up with what I'm hoping are, and hopefully there are more than three, but what are 3 key takeaways that we would like to land, that we hope we've landed, and hopefully create some more discussion around in terms of the last 45 minutes. Let's jump into that.
Yeah. Okay. Let me perhaps jump in first here, Mike. Well, the first key, ladies and gentlemen, is your value proposition. You will notice that your VP is pervasive right at the top, right? When you're coming up with your goals, when you're coming up with your sales process, it is the heart of the sales process. When you're structuring your sales methodology, once again, your value proposition, ladies and gentlemen, is everything. And what is your value proposition? Well, it's a simple expression, narrative, and articulation of why the customer should choose you. That's what value proposition is. Your value proposition defines what you do and why you should be chosen. It's absolutely, absolutely key. Your value proposition cuts through the clutter of noise. We're in a very loud marketplace, ladies and gents. There's so many brands clamoring for our time, for our energy. We're in a noisy place. A good value proposition cuts through the clutter and articulates the problem of the customer even better than they can, which is why they instinctively look to you to solve that particular problem, you see? And we can't talk about value proposition without articulating the legendary Theodore Levitt. Well, he famously said, people don't want to buy a 1/4 inch drill. What they want is a 1/4 inch hole. What are we saying? As sales professionals, yes, we can fall in love with our products and services, and we have to be passionate about what we're doing. It's just a part of the game. But we have to understand that the market doesn't care. Respectfully, what the market wants is a hole. What we're selling is a drill. And this is where the value wedge comes in. This is where your value proposition acts like a pivot, like a fulcrum to lift the client into the decision. Where you don't want to be is in a position of value parity. You don't want to be there. You don't want to be there. Where you're just sort of oscillating between how do I articulate my value? I'm only articulating my value relative to the competition. No, you don't want to be there. You want to achieve that sweet spot of the value wedge that actually gets to the heart of the struggle. Yep, Mike. Help
Yeah,
me out.
it's,
Help me out here with key number 2. Let's give them some keys. Let's give them some takeaways from today.
well, I think this is a big one. Personally, I think this is the invitation for greatest differentiation. And I'd like to also debunk, the second debunk is that, you know, we've been told that we need to build trust, and we do. And, you know, we've been told that we build trust by how we make people feel, the questions that we ask, and are we listening that conversation into existence, as David White famously said. And too many of us go in with the question to say, tell me what you want and I'll get it for you. I'd like to reframe that potentially today is the death knell of your process. Buyers want salespeople who will tell them what they should want. They want you to sift through all the data for them. They expect you to know more. And they want you to connect the dots based on your insight on how you're going to improve their performance with your experience, your showcases, your ability to link value to their context, and get them to think about their business differently. Key insight number 2.
Powerful. Powerful. Powerful, Mike. And last but not least, well, you got to speak to the customer deciding journey and not be too obsessed with your own sales process, ladies and gentlemen. It's important to have a sales process, and we've defined that as the gateways that we go through from creating awareness to actually having a paying client, and it's absolutely key. However, we can't be too rigid, and this is what happens a lot of times, and we see this where the sales process is now guiding the engagements. That's an error. The sales process is now guiding the sales methodology. You got to watch out for that one. We see that every single day of our lives. And even though it's important to have a structured process, we continually need to sense check that our sales process is actually working according to the customer deciding journey. Do our customers prefer to fill in a form online? Or do our customers prefer a face-to-face meeting versus a virtual meeting? What is the preference of the client? So we've got to be careful, and we have to be very delicate here to make sure that we are engaging the customer the way the customer wants to buy. Does the customer want a POC, proof of concept? Powerful way for you to get in with your customers. So do we have POCs as a part of our journey? Do our customers just want to call us and get a price or a quote over the phone? When we're insisting, when we should have a meeting to actually uncover what their struggle is, to uncover the job, Theodore Levitt. And those are some of the dynamics we need to take into crucial consideration when we're actually rolling out our plans and our strategies. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Anything to stack on there, Mike, as we wrap up? I think we're doing good for time. I think we've got about 6 minutes.
I think let's wrap up with the final positioning. And you know, I think it's important that when we look at our sales strategy and we look at how we're formulating the sales strategy, there's some key assumptions and some key questions that we want to ask. And we started off the conversation earlier this afternoon with this view of, is our sales strategy internally based or is it externally based? And from an external perspective, I think the final acid test or litmus test on your sales strategy should be the following. Is that, does your sales strategy position you in the market as a thinking partner? Have you created the frameworks, the thinking, the processes, the capabilities, the beliefs, the insights, the judgments of all the data that you need? And have we got the ability and the belief to show up as the identity of being a thinking partner versus selling those drills that we know the market doesn't want? The second point that I think we should look at is, do we have a sense that we're going to build a capability within the business and an engagement model and a culture within the business that we feel that our customers will feel heard? That talks to the way in which we ingest the critical skills that we need to create differentiation, to listen, to engage, to challenge where, but to ultimately play back at a social, emotional, functional, this is what I heard you say. And are we on the same pace? Thirdly, I think we need to look at it and say, Does our value proposition stack up? Is it differentiation? Is it differentiated? And does it get the market to want your value proposition in their business? And then finally, I think it's around trust. We always know trust is at the core of it. But does our sales strategy allow us through every touch point in the market, because every touch point in the market is either brand building or brand damaging? And do we get a sense and create a sense of trust? And ultimately, when we look to execute on our promise, do they trust us that we will deliver on our promise? And I think those are the 4 core hallmarks of differentiation. If we want to create a perception and move out of what we call category holders, where the market just sees us as the same as everybody else, how do we move into this uncontested space of the blue ocean thinking, where we can engage and connect? And it doesn't come down to price anymore. It comes down to, I see your value, can you deliver on your promise? And I think that is the primary invitation. And are we building that into our sales structures? And are we seeing it in our sales strategy?
Beautiful. Mike, my goodness, we could go on for another day. I mean, this was way too short. We have to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, we want to do a very quick survey. There is a link in the chat that will be dropped as well, but there's a QR code if you're that way inclined and you would prefer to scan it. Tell us how you feel about the webinar today. We need your feedback. We need to find out how we did. We need to find out if my hair gel is coming through. We need to find out if Mike is going to wiggle for us today. All those important things. We want some feedback from you. But hey, let's just check the chat. I think we've got 2 minutes. Is there perhaps a comment or a burning question, Mike, that we can lift up? John says, trust is a huge factor. It's foundational. I think John enjoyed the session. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Keith is having some marketing materials redesigned. Wiseman says he enjoyed the session. Thanks, Wiseman. Appreciate it. See any questions from your side, Mike, that I may be missing?
Yeah, I see a nice dot connect from Keith in terms of the simplicity and the value, and focusing on what they need to create in terms of a very simplified message, and what they need to let go. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I see that too. Well done, Keith. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for giving us an hour of your life. We really appreciate it. I think we sufficiently done. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and taking time. For myself, Winston Nolan, Senior Sales Architect at LRMG SO. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your energy, and signing out.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wins, and thank you, team, and thank you for the opportunity to engage with you. It has been a privilege, and we will see you all in the trenches. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday.